From the National Newsroom of the Canadian Press, I'm Karen Rebo. Fresh recommendations are expected today from a commission of inquiry into foreign interference, including advice on when the public should be told of meddling during a federal election campaign. The final report from Commissioner and Quebec Judge Marie-Josée Hug will also address simmering allegations about the activities of some parliamentarians and will suggest ways to better protect members of vulnerable communities from transnational repression. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Warsaw, Poland today, meeting with his Polish counterpart to sign a nuclear energy cooperation agreement. Last month, Export Development Canada issued a letter of interest to provide up to $2 billion in financing to support Canadian suppliers selling goods and services to help Poland start to build its first nuclear power plant next year. An American tax lawyer says a growing number of U.S. citizens who live in Canada are considering renouncing their U.S. citizenship since President Donald Trump was reelected to the White House. Alexander Marino, the director of U.S. tax law at Moody's Tax Law in Calgary, says on top of the burden of having their income subject to U.S. taxation while living in Canada, many are just unhappy Trump's back in power, and they're inquiring about the process of cutting ties.
Most U.S. expats, in my experience, tend to be more left-leaning than right-leaning. And for many who may have been sort of sitting on the sidelines saying, hey, the financial consequences are pretty horrific, but I'm just going to grin and bear it. For a lot of people, the election results are a bit of the straw that broke the camel's back.
He expects a record number of people will begin the process of giving up their U.S. citizenship this year. Snowbirds, who once flocked to Florida every winter, are now saying it's too expensive to live there. Canadian Press reporter Chris Reynolds tells us with the low Canadian dollar and skyrocketing insurance premiums in Florida due to climate change, many Canadians are looking for alternatives.
People want to spend one winter or maybe a month or two of a winter in Portugal and then the next year in Dominican Republic or Mexico, where prices, by the way, would also be cheaper than in Florida.
Realtor Alexander DuPont, who caters mainly to Quebecers in southeast Florida, says she has more seller clients now than at any point in the past decade. Organizations representing Alberta doctors and the larger Canadian Medical Association are both slamming a COVID-19 report by an Alberta government panel. Dr. Shelley Duggan, head of the Alberta Medical Association, says the report is anti-science and anti-evidence. She says its recommendations to halt COVID vaccines and give doctors freedom to prescribe alternative therapies have the potential to cause harm in any future pandemic. And CMA President Dr. Joss Reimer says the $2 million report promotes misinformation and has the potential to create mistrust of the medical and scientific communities. This is the Canadian Press. In sports, there were 5 games in the NHL Monday night. Corey Perry scored halfway through the second period to snap a tie and lifted the Edmonton Oilers to a 4-2 win over the visiting Seattle Kraken. Connor McDavid also scored for the Oilers in his return to the lineup following a 3-game suspension. Connor Garland scored twice to help the Vancouver Canucks beat St. Louis 5-2. Elsewhere, it was San Jose 2-1 over Pittsburgh. Detroit skated past the LA Kings 5-2, and it was Philadelphia doubling the New Jersey Devils 4-2. In the NBA, the Toronto Raptors won their 4th game in a row. Jakob Poeltl and Scotty Barnes each had 21 points as the Raptors beat the visiting New Orleans Pelicans 113-104. The Eastern Conference leading Cleveland Cavaliers snapped their 3-game losing skid with a 113-91 victory over the visiting Detroit Pistons. And a buzzer beater lifted the Houston Rockets to a 114-112 win over the Boston Celtics. From the Canadian Press, I'm Karen Rebo.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. For more of today's top stories, visit thecanadianpressnews.ca.